Okay, we're going to give the tutorial for how to use the item selection tool and also kind of show up some of the features that come included with this program. First, you're going to start by opening it up. You'll see we've got a bunch of little options here for settings, different things, a bunch of buttons to use. So what we're going to want to do is make sure our settings for all of our options are where we want them to be. You've got the visible column here. This is just checking whether or not you want visible items from this category. So family visible items, MEP visible items. You've got the invisible column for items that are hidden. View only, which should be only to the current active stored view, which when you push the refresh or the pre-select items will set that to the current view that you're in actively. And you've got include linked, which will include external things like this object right here, which is very poorly placed in the current project, which is just a test project, is a linked file. So this item doesn't actually exist in this project, it's an external project. By using include linked, those items will be included. You can't select them, unfortunately, like you would anything else, but they technically do exist as a selection at some level. Most of the time you could probably run just fine without this, because, you know, you may not have anything selected, or you may not have anything linked in your project. But in our case, we're going to keep it selected because I may make use of it from time to time in a few different selections. I mean, there's only like one main selection, like export IDs, which is inclusive of it. So other than exporting IDs, you may not really need it, but it's still good to have potentially just for other options you might be searching for, and that will be demonstrated in future of the tutorial. You have your categories here. This all just basically turns on or off all of them. This is the same for all of these. If there's ever like a whole set of invisible you want to get, or if you only want invisible and not visible, you can set that. And each category has different aspects to it that you might be looking for. So floors is talking about like the different reference levels. So floor 3, floor 2, floor 1, and includes like other things like inside of the linked file as well that it'll check. You have MEP items, which is your duct items, your conduit, and your pipe items. Those three lists will be populated with that. You've got family items, which are like different family elements, you know, instances of family pieces. So like the pieces of duct, the lights, the like different elbows and stuff to the duct, because those aren't like Revit parts. And also like, you know, fabricated items too, potentially. Actually, fabricated parts wouldn't be in there, but like things like mechanical equipment would probably be in that list. You've got user work set, which is just going to include like all items that are set to a specific work set, so you can kind of select based on a whole work set if you wanted to. Edited by, which edited by and workshare edited by, these will both be kind of dealing with situations where people have edited something and their name is attached to it as an editor from that. And so you can potentially select items that people have recently edited themselves and by person. So that can be kind of useful. That's usually fairly niche, but it has uses. You got object parameters. Now that is for different parameters that are included in each object. So things like height or width, or in fact we could select an item and probably get a good idea. Make sure I'm not selecting anything. So like let's select this duct perhaps, right? So you got diameter, length, system classification, size lock, you can actually check that as well. Hydraulic diameter, or whatever that is, yeah. So like all of these different little options, those are included in that list. And you have fabricated parameters. Now those are included in that parameter list, but those are specifically for fabricated parts because they have separate parameters in them. And then you have the revision tag, which is going to show you different revisions, like by sheet or clouds that you have in the program, in the project, that are revisions. So that's the general list of all of the things that this tool can look at and kind of come to make sense of. So what we're going to do is make sure our linked files are selected. They should always be selected, so like the default state is it just selects all linked files. Once again, if you turn off include linked, these won't really matter even if they're selected, because they just won't be run through. But you can accept, you can remove or replace, whatever you want to do to that. And if you ever add a linked file into the program, you can click the refresh linked file, or refresh linked file if list is changed. So if you have new linked files you've added to the project recently, this will repopulate every time you start this program. But if you just added some while this program was open, this will refresh it and you'll get those added in as the default, and you can select them and do what you want with them as well. And you'll note that when you remove a linked file and accept, it will actually show you that it's custom currently. It's not in this default state, which is having all of them on. It's a custom state now where it only has whatever you've selected. So we'll go ahead and leave that on because I want it to be able to select that. Okay, now that we've covered all of these settings up here, let's go ahead and do a refresh of our selection list. So now you'll see that it's set the current stored active view to the current view we're in, which is this 3D view. And it's begun going through the process of building all of the information for all the things we have selected. So it's checking through this document, it's checking through the external documents, the linked documents, because we have those selected, and because they're set on and all that. And it's collecting all this information about the floors, the MEP items, the families, work sets, and all that. So it takes a little while, but it should be done relatively soon. Okay, now that it's completed, we can kind of show off some of the features of this. So now it's done its first refresh, and now everything in the document is read into the program. Now what we can do is we can start to use some of the power of this tool to make some selections. So let's say we wanted to select everything on level 3. So everything that's part of level 3, we'll just select now. So we can use the Select All Matches in Documents button to select everything. Now this would also select, if we were doing export IDs, this would also select anything in the external files that have a level 3 association as well. But currently that's not going to be an issue, and also if we're doing Select All in Documents, that can only really select what's in front of us. So we can't use external items because we don't have those in front of us. We can't select those. So we'll go ahead and see what it all selects. There you go. It's selected all of these items on top here that are associated with level 3. Now obviously this isn't like the roof level, because remember that's a roof level, so that's why you might think it hasn't selected all the top stuff, but it's really only supposed to select level 3. So all of those items are now selected, and it was just that easy. 1,400 items have been just selected instantly. And obviously you can just click and remove that selection, and then let's say we want to select stuff on level 2, only level 2. Just do that. Boom, there's everything on level 2. Now let's say that we want to do a little bit something more interesting. So we have the duct related items, which will select anything that's duct related up here. So let's go ahead and we'll zoom in. And as you can see, there's a bunch of duct running through here on level 3. And if we select level 3, you should see that it has selected that duct, but it's also selected everything else, So maybe we want to do a selection of all the stuff on level 3, but we're not really concerned with the ducts. So let's say that we don't want duct included. So we can deselect. You should be able to also keep it selected and do this change, but it's just easier to deselect since it takes so much processing power for everything to be selected. So what we'll do is we'll add level 3, and we'll go to not mode, and we will remove, let's just remove all of Duct. So now everything in Duct has been checked to be removed. So not means it doesn't want it included in the selection mode. So we select level 3 and we don't select the Duct. So now when we do the selection, what should happen is everything except the Duct has been selected from level 3. So this could be useful in making a mass selection of an area and kind of, you know, adjusting down what you want in the selection. So obviously the way it works right now, you would select level 3, which includes everything, and then you would just chip out what you don't want. Maybe you don't want duct, maybe you don't want the pipes, maybe you want the conduits though. Maybe you don't want items specifically edited by someone or something like that. You can kind of slowly take the large amount of items and kind of whittle it down to a more controlled amount of items that you're actually looking for. So that's some of the really powerful, those are some of the powerful things that you can do with this program. But there are even more things we can do. So let's see. Let's say we want to select a specific family. So let's go ahead and we'll scroll down to the family section here. So let's say families. I think, trying to think of like, well actually I guess I could just look at one. So I was trying to remember what the name of the family was. But let's say we want this family specifically. So M rectangular duct. So we'll go down to M, should be in here. We'll go down to M rectangular duct. So let's say we want to select all the, actually we want to turn it into AND mode. Let's say we want to select all the rectangular duct. We'll just pick everything that sounds like rectangular duct, because why not? Sure, that should be fine. We select all of those, and now all of those families of those items are selected. So now, if you wanted to select specifically all of the elbows or all of the mitered 90-degree angles on the duct, you can do that selection real easy. It's for the entire project. And there are other features you can get with like pre-selection items and selection filters and stuff like that that can make it even more controlled, so that you could, let's say, build almost a cut piece of a specific area and specifically only the mitered elbows. So, you know, that's a very interesting case you might want to use it for. So let's see. That's a pretty good show of that. Let's do... There's one for edited by I could have done, but I don't think we need to worry too much about edited by. I mean, well, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. Let me just deselect everything here. We'll close the families because we're not going to worry about the families anymore. So we can show maybe, oh yeah, sure, fine, why not? We'll show the edited by list. So there's a few different ones that might be, because it's kind of hard to figure out exactly what edited by is referencing to, because in work sets it can be a little bit different, and sometimes there's things that are edited, but then when you sync it, it's not edited anymore, so it can be a little bit finicky. But you could use this as a method to grab items specifically like edited by me or adjusted by me. So let's see what's in here. So there's apparently 6 items recently. Like that used to be a higher number, so that must be like before a refresh or a synchronization happens. And it looks like it's only really affected by the cameras and stuff. So me moving around has kind of modified that, and that's what it's going off of. But I could also select in here, and we can select all of the items that I've just edited throughout this whole project. So all of the things I've made contact with, the linked project that I put in here. the duct elements, the light elements, and stuff that I've modified, those are all shown by this. So I know that I have edited these things, or at least I was the last one who edited them. So like that could be really useful in some cases, whenever you're like trying to determine who did what work where at a specific time, maybe. Or when you're trying to like kind of collect information on whose area is being worked on recently. Let's show one of the really interesting things we can do. So this one's a big section. So as you can see, there's 2,079 options in here. This is the object parameters. This is a very big section. If you're ever trying to run this program really quickly and reduce a lot of the friction of loading and processing and stuff like that, you'll want to make sure to turn off object parameters, because they are obviously huge. There's 2,000 of those, and then another 53 in fabricated items. Those are just all the details to each part, and every possible type of detail connected to every possible thing. So it is very intensive, but it does give you some cool powers. So let's say, I'm trying to think of what would be a good example of this. Let's maybe look at light fixtures. What would be a good one? I could check for coefficient of utilization, maybe. So let's go for that. Let's go for calculation, because I'm trying to like get something that's not contained in a lot of things, because I don't want to select like 5,000 items, because it's kind of painful. So let's try and just find this specific item. So here, calculate coefficient of utilization. That's what it is, right? So now anything. So currently the way this is it's got all right here. That means, are you trying to select all things? So what we have done is we have added this item for what we want to search for, and we want all of their elements, because I haven't specified anything. So it's going to collect any element that has this as a parameter. So if I select matches and document, it should be all the lamps, and luckily that's it. So thank God I picked something that was small. But there's 410 lamps on here, apparently. Or lighting fixtures. And obviously, if that was a more generic name, that would be a more generic parameter, that would be potentially a problem, because if I selected, let's say, size or width, I would select probably all the light fixtures, all the duct, all of the pipes, all of the, so it gets rather extreme. So you gotta be careful with that. But there are some cool things you can do with this, but you do have to be very exact. The way this program is kind of trying to deal with these, I have special notes up here that mention it, but when using an advanced search in the tree, sometimes you're gonna have a hard time finding some items, because the number gets rounded sometimes. You have to be very exact, and lettering and everything is very important. So you'll kind of see an example of it, because I'm going to show an example here, but this is a situation that you'll want to be very precise with what you're saying in here, because it can be used to a good advantage, and it's usually way more useful for some other things like comments or marks or something like that. That's usually very easy, because you're not going to have a rounding situation. But for this specific thing, there will be a rounding situation. But I've dealt with that possibility. So what we want to do is I want to check out the additional flow on the duct here. So we've got one of the parameters should be, there you go, additional flow. And you'll see it's at 0 liters per second. So we're going to search for that. And we're going to search for it on another level too, because we have a search system here. So I'm going to actually look for additional, and I could put flow, but I'll just use the word additional. That should be fine. And what that's going to do is I'll be able to use this to search this tree and figure out how to get to these different additional terms. So it'll make it a little bit easier to go through this tree, but it can be a little bit slow. So we'll click this and we'll start loading, and what it'll do is it'll search through all the elements to kind of find them. And then once it's found them, it'll give us our results, highlight them in blue, and allow us to quickly sift through them. So let's say we're off screen or they're separated by a large distance. Well, now I can use the arrows to jump to the second example, third example, fourth example, 5 of 5. You can scroll back and however you need to go back to where these different locations are that additional was found. So if I look for something like fixed or something, I think it'll jump me down to different locations here, and maybe there's something in like the D's or C's. So it makes it possible to jump through the program a lot faster and kind of get where you need to go. But for our example, what we want is additional flow right here. So we're going to add that, and we can go ahead and clear this out and just reset it, and then we don't have to have that blue text there. But what we want is we want to find a specific type of duct. So I've got a few examples in here of duct that's running at a different number. So let's say 0.1 liters per second. And you'll see that I've typed in exactly how it appears in here, with dealing with the rounding as well, because it's rounding to the tenths. And that is basically what you'll want to do to find it with this system. So now if I do select, it's going to search all of the duct for additional flow. Then it's going to search all of those items for this specific name. So now when I do search, you'll see it sifted through. It had a little loading bar because it was sifting through things. But it found 3 situations where that was true. So these 3 I had adjusted to have 0.1 liters per second. So that just made it really easy for me to find specific flow rates in an entire building that were subsets of duct that I wouldn't necessarily know right away. In fact, let's look for the other example I have. There was one that I had at 3. There you go. That one is 3. So that didn't take any effort, and I can export a list of the IDs if I ever want to like come back and check on those specific parts or find them in the program at any other point in the future. So like that's really powerful, and it can also be used for other situations like comments here. So let's go ahead and go to comment. In fact, let's remove this. We'll go to comment, and it will find those. And what we'll do is we'll try to make use of comments here to kind of move even faster through things like phasing or something like that you might have on different parts, or you might make a note on some item saying this is to be changed in revision 2 or to be adjusted in revision 3 or whatever you want to do, you know. So let's say we want to search for comments, and we'll search for recheck. So what are all the items that we had planned to do rechecks on, or they need to be rechecked in field or something like that? Do a search, it'll select them all. It was these 2 lights. So these 2 lights had to be rechecked, and there was another one I had put in that was adjust in V2. So let's see where that one is. And that one's right here. So this light needed to be adjusted in version 2. So this makes the process of searching the whole building or quickly pulling information about the building a lot easier. And then what we can do now is we can go ahead and explain some more about how exporting IDs and stuff is useful. So, actually there was an example I have. So I have an example of some duct here. So now this is the linked model, and there's a bit of duct here that actually has a tag on it in comments. So comments has an external tag. So this duct I tagged with that comment. And now I'm in this program, and I'm going to do a search that includes all the linked objects. So now I will search for external. I didn't spell that, sorry. External. Okay, so I'm going to do a search for external. Now, if I do select documents, it will say that no items were found, or they were only found in linked documents. So I couldn't select anything because nothing in my project has that as a comment. But there are elements in all of these projects that do have this comment. And what I can do is I can export the list of IDs here. So now it pulls those IDs, and what I can do is I can create a basic ID list, and I can also create a CSV. So let's go ahead and export those two as an option. And then we'll just name, here, hold on a second, it's on screen. If I can, yeah. So we'll create external example. So there's the external example, and that'll be the text document. And then it comes up with a new one, which is CSV. We'll make an external example as well. So we'll save that. So now those have both been saved. And now I can go ahead and open those, and you'll see what exporting an ID can do for us. One of the other great things we can do with the exported list of IDs is we can also just load that list of IDs that we just exported from the actual file, and it'll select those in the project too. Okay. So here we got the text document it created. You'll see there are no items that were selected in the current project. So the current document doesn't have anything because there weren't any elements. But in the linked document and the specific document that it was selected in, there were 3 IDs. And now if you go into this project and you search these IDs, you will find the 3 duct pieces that were labeled with the comment external. So that's really useful. And the CSV does pretty much the same thing, but it has a little bit more for its information. So you have the element ID, you have the actual ID itself, it tells you the element name, and the element name is mitered elbows and T's. So there was a T and 2 taps that had that. They were category duct. They're in a linked element, so you know they're linked. I mean, it's also down here, so it's clear it's linked, but it's just a bit more like pointed out that way. And it also tells you if it's visible. Now, for external documents, it's likely that this may not be accurate, the visibility. It's only really capable of telling that in the current document, but maybe it knows something that I don't. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll check out the revision tags real quick, and then we should be ready to move on to the next step where I'll show off the invisible duct, because we have to do an adjustment here to show the invisible items. And you'll note that when you change something up here as a setting, it will request that you refresh your document in some way, or the list or whatever, or put it back. And you can put it back in 2 different ways. You can put the actual things that you changed back, and it will recognize that, or you can use the set to previous, and what set to previous will do is it'll just readjust the things to be what it was previously. And so what we'll do is we'll go to the revisions, because that's one of the last things we want to look at here. And the revisions list is not super involved. I want to do more with it, but I don't really know if I have a ton planned for it. But it's pretty useful as it is right now, because you might have revisions on different locations that you want to check out at some point during your project. Maybe you want to maybe you have a revision, like let's say like revision 5 is applied to a bunch of different sheets, a bunch of different clouds, and you don't know where those clouds are, what those sheets are. You need a quick way to like get a hold of that information. This makes it a lot faster for you because you can just kind of check out this list, but it can also point you in the direction of more information on those things. So let me show you some points here. So revision 1 I have a cloud somewhere that is using revision 1. This cloud doesn't seem to be on a sheet because a sheet will take on the revisions from clouds. So I can tell that this is just a cloud by itself. But not only that, I can select that cloud, and now I have the cloud that I am selecting. So if I go to, let's say I go to Manage, and I get the ID of my selection, so I can kind of reference it quickly, and then select by ID, and I just say Show. It'll take me to that cloud. So here I go. This cloud was not placed on a sheet, would have been hard to find. I would never know where this revision was. I might place this onto a sheet that has clouds disabled, and I'll never know why that sheet says that there's a cloud there. Well, now I know that this cloud has been placed here, and is probably not supposed to be because it's just a view by itself. So I can make whatever adjustments I want with that, and it basically gave me a way to get to here and figure this out quickly, because I would have to scour the entire project to find this. And we've got revision 2 here. There's a cloud on a sheet, it just so happens, but you can prove this by selecting the cloud and figuring out what it is. So there's a cloud. Let's go ahead and do the same thing we did with the last one. Let's get the ID. Put it in here, we'll go to it, and it'll take us to that sheet. And it looks like this cloud is placed here, and it just so happens that it is also on this sheet. But we already knew that in a way because we can see that E101 has this cloud on it already. So that's really useful for telling us, when there are sheets with different revisions. So like revision 4, I know E101 and E201 in my list, those have these revisions. So that makes that process a lot easier to quickly get that information and get to those locations if you need to. In case you have to change a revision, or if there's a revision update, you might have to run through all of your sheets and make that revision update. Well, you might not remember that there are 5 sheets that had it, and you adjusted it on 4, and you forgot that 5th one. Now that 5th one's going to be messed up in the field. So this allows you to check that, make sure that you have that stuff sorted out before it gets to that point. So that's super useful. Alright, so let's go ahead and check out some of the last few things that I want to show off here. So the last things I want to show are some kind of interesting utilities that we have here. Oh, and I also wanted to show the invisible duct. So let's go ahead and do the invisible duct. So one of the things we can do is let's say we want to pick a few different items, because this is going to give us a good example of something else we can do, which might be useful at different times depending on different situations. But let's say that we have a list of selections, and we have some non-selections here for whatever reasons. So we've got all these items selected from Duct. Well, we can save a list of these selected items. And it's giving us a notice that revisions won't be saved in this way. It's kind of hard to deal with the revisions, so I haven't gotten that added in. But it's very rare situations that you're going to want to do that with revisions anyway, so it's not really a big concern. But everything else should apply this way. So what we can do is we can create a text file that will store those options for us. What do I want to say? Duct example. So we'll save that. So now we have this. Now this is saved, and it's basically listing the entire tree and everything in it. And it's got our settings that we have currently set to, so that we can recall that information. So now, let's say I just turn those off or whatever, or in fact, we could have just done a refresh because it was going to do it either way. So let's turn it invisible, because I want to add the example of invisible stuff, and we'll go ahead and refresh this. I could probably make this smaller. Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's remove revisions. We don't need those. We don't need edited by, work set. I don't think we really need family either. And we probably don't need floors either. So now we can just run it with MEP items and the object parameters, and it should be a lot faster and all that because there's less stuff it's got to sift through. Okay, it's done loading. Now there's still a lot of options because obviously we left object parameters in, but there was another example I wanted to do with them. It's the only reason why I kept them. But let's say we want to reload those items we had selected. So here's our duct list, nothing is checked. Let's go ahead and load that item. So we'll load the duct example. We'll open it. And it should have updated here. Yep. So there are the 3 things we added and the 2 things we knotted. So that's pretty useful if you've got like a selection. Maybe you want to make a selection of duct related items and save that as like a duct selection list, and then later on you can recall it in a different project because it will attempt to find those items that are in that list, and if it doesn't find them, it won't add them. But it will select any of the items that were in that list that you had saved if it can find them. So that's really useful and really powerful if you want to make subsets of lists and stuff to sift through. So let's show something really interesting that we can do. Actually, let's do something simple first. So we'll select duct, and we're selecting invisible. I know I should do a different selection. We'll do that in a minute. So what we'll do is we'll go to the object parameters again. And we'll go to the additional flow, because I wanted to show off a little bit of an interesting thing you can do with this system as well. Alright, so here's additional flow. Let's go ahead and put in our 0.1 L per second. And we'll add that in. And now what we're going to do is something interesting here. We've got the start selection list as a filter. So now let's say we want to find these specific items, but we don't want to select all of them that exist because maybe there's a whole bunch of them. Well, I can just do start selection as filter. It'll ask me if I want to do a box selection or a single object selection, or do I want to cancel. But we're going to do a box selection. It'll load all the possible items, and then when we do a box selection, only those items will be selected. So if we wanted to do like a sub-selection of items or something like that, we can do that really easily with this. And it lets you kind of work faster in the flow to find specific items. So maybe you want to find a commented item in a specific range. Alright, so now let's see. Let's go ahead and show actually, let's go ahead and let's just reset this, because I want to do just invisible items so that we can see what kind of items are here that are invisible that we can't see in this project that we want to make a selection of. So I'll reload this and we'll be back. Alright, so it's gone through that pretty quickly because now there's very few options for it, because there's only a handful of items in this project that are invisible, but we can see that there are 3 duct related items that are invisible, and we can select them. I don't think it'll be able, actually no, it will be able to select them, so I can select them. There are 7 items that are hidden, and it just so happens those 7 items are actually right here there's some pieces of Duct that I hid beforehand to show that you can actually search for hidden items. Let me just turn on this. So this will show me hidden items. So you can see these are the hidden items it is selecting. If I select, there you go, select previous. See, you'll see that these items are now selected. Those items are invisible, but the program was able to find them. So that can be really useful if you've got items that are hidden in your project that you might be looking for. Alright. Alright, so we got two more things I want to show here. So let's say that we're working in this area with the toilets here, the water closets, and the sinks, and all of that. Let's say that I specifically want to look through here for some item. So I can select those items, and I can say pre-select items, and it'll now turn into set items. And now what it's done is it has taken all of these items and made a selection list from them. Also, I might want to change that so it includes visible items. Okay, I've made some adjustments there. So we've got, so our pre-selected items have been selected. We've selected what's visible, and now that we've used that, the pre-selection items section, pre-selection items button, what we've done is we've basically built a new search list based on these parts only. So in here I could look at this and just kind of tell, okay, well there's some flush valves, some publics, you know, some stuff like that. I can also just select specific items in that list, so just the pipes, or maybe just the publics. So there's a sink there. You know, just make basic quick selections from this subset of items. So that's really useful for kind of dealing with search systems in a faster, smaller case, in the event you're looking through specifically one room, maybe. So there's a lot of utility there. And then one other thing we want to do is I wanted to show the last item I have, which is the quick selection tools. And that only really works when a full document search is done, not like a pre-selected item, because it's going to use all of the information available to make a determination of what to select. So let's go ahead and open up a view with something perhaps that I want to select. Let's use the toilet room again. So let's say I select these items for whatever reason, and oh, hold on, let me refresh the list here. Okay. Alright, let's say I want to select these items, but then I decide that I want the other items in this area selected and not these items. Well, with quick selection, you can grab that and it will give you the options to do an invert selection world, which will unselect these items and select everything else in the entire project instead, which is probably not something most people want to do. However, there's also an invert selection for view, so I will just do this view. So if I click this, it selected the inverted items, and now I don't have to worry about, you know, deselecting or reselecting or trying to select specific pieces or unselect this and that. I can just immediately switch the selection to whatever else is in the room. And here you can see it only applied to that view. Now, the floors and stuff can be included in this process, so it is totally possible to accidentally select a whole floor section because it was part of the view. But outside of that, it shouldn't do any other selections. And with that, I believe that shows all of the utility that can be done from this program. So I think that this tool is really powerful, and it would be useful for a lot of different people for all sorts of different things, from collecting lists of IDs for items you want to like find or manipulate later, to finding a whole bunch of items that you might not be able to see, to finding items that are specifically named or tagged. There's a whole bunch of utility here, and I think that in the right hands, this can do an awful lot. Also, I forgot about this last thing, there's this little About section here. So the About and Settings button will allow you to see like the name of the program, the version number for the program, the link to our website, and the link to the tutorial for this video, which you're obviously watching right now, and all the contact emails for the bug reports and customer support. And if there's an update, it'll point you in the right direction. And it's pretty much everything that's a part of this program. So I believe this is a very powerful tool that could be of great use to all sorts of different people out there managing their projects that want to sift through information or collect information and make use of that information a lot faster. So if this looks like something you'd like to have, you can head over to the Autodesk store and purchase this program. It can be found easily in their app store, and it can also be found in the link in the description. There are plans to add more features, as there were some that were not able to get added in just yet due to other priorities. So check back in the future for any updates and keep an eye out for any other tools we might create that you might be interested in. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope this program is of good use to you and your company.